Greetings, friends. My name is Jessa McLean, and I'm here to provide you with some blueprints of disruption. This weekly podcast is dedicated to amplifying the work of activists, examining power structures, and sharing the success stories from the grassroots. Through these discussions, we hope to provide folks with the tools and the inspiration they need to start to dismantle capitalism, decolonize our spaces, and bring about the political revolution that we know we need. There's a lot of talk going around about AI. Prime Minister Mark Carney is a big champion of this worker-replacing, resource-sucking technology. I wonder why. But what exactly is the future of AI? The Canadian government is making massive investments in it, with aspirations that it'll be integrated at levels 5 times what it is now. We had the folks from StopGenAI.com on here last year to talk about the downfalls of specifically generative AI. It's leaving folks unemployed in its wake. It's using up incredible amounts of water and releasing toxins back into the supply. It's requiring massive data centers that use up reckless amounts of energy and are usually dumped in low-income communities. It's also not what the tech oligarchs say it is. It's so flawed in so many ways, and it's unsustainable. The good news is there is a movement of people that are not just paying attention, but working against this rollout. And one of them is Kim Crawley. She's an activist, an author, and an expert in cybersecurity. Knowing its impacts and cheering on its eventual demise isn't enough, though. Kim is also planning for what comes after. She's been on Blueprints before. She is a trove of information, so we'll link her previous episodes in the show notes. That is also where we will have a link to Kim's Kickstarter for her book on recovering from GenAI, which you're about to hear a lot about. Welcome back, Kim. Are we on visit number 2 or 3?
I think this is either 3 or 4.
3 or 4. Oh, that's awesome. Okay, so we're back to talk about AI, though. It's hit a fever pitch. People are talking about it again, so this is the perfect time for a self-described AI extremist, anti-AI extremist, to come into the chat and talk about some of the aspects that perhaps people aren't talking about when it comes to AI. Welcome back, Kim. How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm happy to see that Blueprints of Disruption is thriving. I love when you have all kinds of activists on. I think that's really great.
And you're one of them. And Santiago is here today. Good morning, Santiago.
Good morning.
You ready to talk data centers and all fun things AI?
Ready as I'll ever be, I guess.
It's a bit of a giant. And Kim, you were on last time. I will link that episode for folks because it's a great resource of the flaws of AI, right? How it's not as good as people hype it up to be. It cannot replace humans. And when it does a lot of damage. And this is kind of above and beyond the environmental impact that I think a lot more people are becoming aware of at this point, right? The data centers, the energy use, the poisoned water, and all of that. But there is a larger toll. How are you doing in your activism around AI? You folks were creating a mutual aid network.
Well, I founded Stop Gen AI in April 2025, and yes, we have at least a couple of dozen really awesome members, including Neha, who was on the podcast with me last time. We've got like Ryan Wilson, we've got Emmy the hacker, we've got if I name them, I'm going to forget people, and they're going to resent me for not naming them, so I'll stop there. But we have we have a couple of dozen really good comrades who all bring their own strengths and knowledge and talents to the organization. Some of them have technical backgrounds, some of them don't. Some of them are Marxist educators, some of them are anarchists.
Okay, before we start talking about the tactics to disrupt, let's let's assess the current situation. Carney about a month ago now announced AI for all, a massive expenditure and framework for handing over money and power to the tech oligarchs, essentially. It's coded with some language that, it's going to work really hard to protect our personal information and prevent deep fakes. But, this is all glossing over the real issues that activists like yourself are trying to raise. I send over the Breach piece to you, and I'll link that to folks here.
Okay, I should open it.
It's about data centers, really, right? And I think that's where a lot of the resistance we're seeing in Canada is coming from to the AI, to just the concept of AI. But AI itself is also getting a lot of pushback. I see a lot of bars or clubs or other establishments getting called out for using it in their promotional materials and then promising they'll never do it again because of the blowback that they're getting, which means, there's a threshold's been reached in the public where they're hyper aware of the dangers of AI. What are some of the things about AI that we might not be talking about, though, Kim, other than the data centers, which we can spend time on as well, because I'm not sure people understand the breadth. Like, if folks are reading the Breach, they'll be a little bit more well-informed after their latest piece on just how much energy they use and what they do to communities and some of the work that's being done to stop them on the municipal level. But it's much bigger than that, isn't it?
Well, first of all, people get really confused about the term AI. The term AI has existed in computer science for decades. People like Emily Bender, who is the author of the AI Con, argue that the term AI is a marketing term. It always has been a marketing term. Artificial intelligence, well, that's subjective. Ever since the dawn of the electronic computers in the 1940s and Turing and whatnot, there have been questions about can computers think and whatnot. People get really confused, and I think people get really confused about AI and GenAI and whatnot. My organization is called Stop GenAI to make it clear that we're not talking about other things that have been called AI over the years. Although Emily Bender still argues it is a marketing term. There's not a formal definition of AI in computer science. Did you know that?
Kind of like terrorism.
There's no formal definition of AI in computer science. So it can just be used as a subjective marketing term.
So for a refresher, what is GenAI?
So GenAI, generative AI, is the monster that Sam Altman and his buddies and frenemies have foisted upon the world starting in November 2022 when ChatGPT launched. So it's LLM implementations like ChatGPT, for instance, or Claude Code, for instance. It's image generation such as Wall-E, which is also something that OpenAI does. It's video and audio generation, but it's just generation based on patterns and massive amounts of training data. And we're talking about massive amounts of training data. We're talking about literally as much of the internet as they can possibly greedily consume. So I'm going to get really nerdy here, but ordinary people are familiar with megabytes and gigabytes and terabytes because those are quantities of data that consumers use every day, right? But when we're talking about the entire internet, we're talking about exabytes and we're talking about zettabytes. So this is just like, if you're into math, it's like exponentially way more data than that, right? So the entire internet probably has like a couple of zettabytes of data at this point. So to get really nerdy. So the differences there are. So before the GenAI menace, most of my familiarity with AI was the bad guys in video games and whatnot, like computerized opponents in video games have been called
Well, we've all
AI.
seen Terminator. It didn't end well. Well, eventually.
There are machine learning applications that aren't like, you could argue that Gen AI is a variety of machine learning, which is you give an AI training data, and then they will learn what kind of output to spit out when you give them certain input. So the training data could be documents or images or video or all kinds of stuff like that, right? Now, you could argue that Gen AI is a form of machine learning, right? But it's like, if it's machine learning, it's like comparing one car and the amount of like fossil fuels that consumes and pollution. It's like comparing one car to and the entire pollution from all of the nation's cars that day.
It's incredible. I think one of the things I read is the data centers, just in terms of like size and breadth, like the hyper centers or whatever that they need to run AI, the one that's being established in Saskatchewan, one would use more power than all the residential units in Regina. And that's just like one of, I don't know, many that are being planned, especially in Alberta. Some folks have taken the stand, though, Kim, that this machinery could be harnessed for good. That one of the underlying issues of what we're seeing right now is it's undemocratic. Municipalities are just trying to plop these data centers in, and the oligarchs are influencing policy. Carney's, really set some goals there for implementing AI as widely as possible, replacing federal employees with it. But if we could just control it, the people, that would be a way to mitigate some of the damage. Do you agree?
Bizarre idea. Totally bizarre. It's not generating good output. It's generating bullshit. Right? It's like, I'm going to make you let a magic 8-ball answer all of my questions from now on. Oh, but this is what it's like. I'm going to put it in terms that a layperson who doesn't know anything about computers can understand. We've got a magic 8-ball or a Ouija board. But the magic 8-ball or the Ouija board is connected to this monstrous machine that sucks all the fresh water out of the earth. And that is what GenAI data centers are doing, by the way. Sucks all the fresh water out of the earth and consumes way more electricity than a large country. And it just wants more and more electricity, which, solar and wind are great, and I encourage the construction of renewable energy sources like that. But the amount of power that they want for these data centers, there's no way that you can keep building solar and air to power the kind of demands that they want as far as the amount of electricity is concerned. It's absolutely absurd, right? So we could be doing good with solar and wind, with normal electricity consumption for normal people's everyday needs, and that project could be going great into slowing down climate disaster. But instead, they want something that can consume way more electricity than what we were consuming before, which we can't keep up with solar or wind turbines. And for what? It's not for anything good. People keep thinking that there's some potential, there's some good that can be salvaged from this. No, it's not. It's literally a bullshitty machine. The images are bullshit. The video, the audio is bullshit. The text is bullshit. One litmus test that people give is, if you really want to have a feeling for how bullshit something like ChatGPT is, for instance, everyone, or most people at least, have their own areas of expertise, whether they're recognized by capitalism for them or not. If you give ChatGPT a prompt based on an area of knowledge that you lack, that you're not very knowledgeable about, the answer that it gives could sound very plausible to you. But as soon as you ask it a question about something that is your area of expertise, you quickly realize, oh no, it's just making up bullshit. So the best way I can explain to lay people who are into computer technology is, for instance, a lot of the training data that ChatGPT uses comes from Reddit. That's Reddit's monetization model these days, is to be training data for GenAI. So you got humans posting their thoughts or ideas or their opinions or their insults toward people, and then that's being fed into GenAI to render text. So if you're familiar with Reddit, you're familiar with the idea that sometimes subreddits have their own culture onto themselves, and they could have their own in-jokes. So let's say, for instance, a subreddit has an in-joke that they say that London is the capital of Japan. And I don't get what's supposed to be funny about that, but it's a bizarre in-joke of that subreddit, right? And they keep people in that subreddit, thousands of people, and they keep saying that London is the capital of Japan. Well, guess what? Pretty soon, that means that ChatGPT or another LLM will start saying that London is the capital of Japan. Because it's a machine that does not understand the meanings of words. It's just if a combination of words is repeated a lot, it will start repeating that combination of words. So the idea that we can democratize AI and, Bernie Sanders really pisses me off, like beyond words. Like I've hated the guy ever since I realized that he was this con man. But it shows how much of a con man he is, because he's going around now being like, well, the problem with AI is that the Silicon Valley people are hoarding all the money. It should be shared with the people. So everyone gets $1,000 a year. That's what should be happening. And it's like, yeah, everyone should get $1,000 a year for an awful machine that is accelerating climate disaster. And then if you're a poor person living in the vicinity of a data center, and if you're poor, obviously you don't have the option of moving easily or at all. And these people are being tortured by nonstop noise pollution. They can't sleep. The emissions are probably slowly giving everyone their cancer. And they're poor, and all of a sudden they're getting these atrocious hydro bills or electricity bills in English outside of Ontario. In American English, electricity bills. And like, if you're poor, what are you going to do if you get like a $5,000 electricity bill all of a sudden?
Mm-hmm. And it must be mentioned, speaking of electricity, you talk about like potentially using wind or solar, but that's not what they're doing, right? Like these proposed data centers in Alberta, well, they want to go to Alberta so that they can use cheap natural gas, they can use fossil fuels, which in a climate catastrophe that we're in right now, when we're fighting as hard as we can to try and even just mitigate the amount of damage that's already locked into our planet, this is just another step to further accelerating that harm, right? And it couldn't be coming at a worse time and meanwhile capitalism is freaking out because it doesn't know how to continue growing. So, here's a fictitious market that we can create and keep growing. It'll only cost us another couple percentage, a couple degrees of global warming, and it'll only kill half of the planet. But like it cannot be emphasized enough how monstrous this is at this moment in time, that this is what we're prioritizing. We have the ability to build all these new things. They always say like, we don't have the resources to build renewable energy, and like it's going to cost too much. But we're putting all this money, all of our resources into something that nobody is really seeing. Like nobody's income is going up, nobody's quality of life is improving. If you work with AI, the only thing that's happening is that your workload has increased because now they expect you to pump out more for the exact same amount of money. Nobody's really benefiting except a very small amount of people, and we're killing the planet further. I mean, it's just insane.
Yeah, I don't want AI for the people. I want Gen AI to be destroyed completely, entirely. And if we actually lived in democracies, then we would have politicians and laws that would be stopping this. But we don't, because I honestly believe that we do not live in a democracy in Canada, and they don't live in a democracy in the United States. I believe that's a facade at this point. So we don't have politicians trying to stop it in any way. But don't get down, because the laws of physics will stop it.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about stopping Gen AI. How it's, because you sent out notice that you have a new project, and
yes.
Looking at it, and knowing that your organization's name is Stop Gen AI.
Yeah, it's not democratize Gen AI for the people. It's Stop Gen AI.
It is, but it's like you're now planning a little bit for the inevitability of us experiencing the damage that we're going to experience from this environmentally, mentally, societally, right? And in the spirit of building new systems or building care packages to get us through these awful times and on the other side, let's talk about that project a bit, both because it'll bring up some of the damages that are going to inevitably be done, but that there is another side. Like how do you envision us getting to the other side of AI?
Yeah, that's great. So that's the thesis. The thesis of my book, Recovering After Gen AI. The Kickstarter campaign runs until August 6th. So that will obviously be linked in the show notes. Thank you very much. And so the thesis of my book is Gen AI is not going to keep going on. You hear people who don't know any better, and they are talking as if it will evolve to become better, or we have to learn to live with it because it's here to stay. But I cite reports from MIT, from the UN, from Harvard Science Review, that all state that Gen AI data centers are unsustainable. So with no regulations, no laws, activists are they have no success in their activism. It will still stop because the laws of physics will stop it. You can't, wind, solar are great, and we should be building more of it. And that's great for sustaining normal electricity demands. But the amount of electricity demands that adding all these Gen AI data centers to the power grid, they cannot be sustained with solar and with wind. So they keep building oil and like putting nuclear back online and whatnot. But mainly oil, which is like way worse than nuclear. And
the end sounds spectacular in a horrible way, though. Like it's like, yay, physics will end that. But what will that look like?
What will that look like? Well, first of all, we cannot generate enough electricity to sustain the data centers that they want. So that's
rolling blackouts, brownouts.
Yeah, that's what the thesis of these reports are. I get maybe rolling blackouts a little bit, but more. We can't get these data centers to run in the first place. So it might start like rolling blackouts, and then it might be data centers that can't even run anymore. I will explore that more in the research of my book, but I mean, we're going to see problems in the power grid right now. And it's so unfair. It's so unfair that poor people, and I'm a poor person at this point, I figure, but the ones who live near data centers and they can't afford to move they are facing electricity bills that are higher than the amount of money they receive in a year. And that's absolutely ridiculous that they're being burdened with that. It wasn't their idea to put this monstrosity on the power grid. They're not consuming it. It's not for them. It's not benefiting them. And then also, if you live near one of these data centers, there's the constant noise that is preventing people from sleeping soundly. It's driving people nuts.
Will that seems to be a contributing factor into the growing movement to do what they can to stop the data centers from being built? It's a bit of a NIMBY, like some of the position is just not here, but not abolitionist to say we're not building them at all. So the end does sound dire, right? But not if, I guess, we get to this political threshold point where it's untenable, right? People are pushing back against all the conditions that have been created through AI and its data centers. But will we notice the other declines that we experience? The ones that we're not talking about as much, the human toll of leaning on AI.
The human toll is going to be absolutely immense. There are you've heard about the lawsuits from families who have lost loved ones because ChatGPT told them to die by suicide. And those lawsuits are ongoing. There are lots of people who have become emotionally attached to the bots, they think they've developed relationships with them, and it's absolutely absurd. It's, the ChatGPT is no more of a person than your toaster is a person. Right, but they've convinced themselves that they have a relationship with the GenAI.
It's very affirming, right? It leans towards agreeing with you and encouraging whatever you're suggesting for the most part, right? So that obviously feeds into a very dangerous and dark cycle if that's what you're initiating through it.
And people offloading their thinking. There have been studies that have been done that even the kind of using Google that was common before 2020, where you put in a query into Google and now you got to look at these web pages to find the information that you want. That is better for your brain than the AI summaries. And the AI summaries are often wrong and dangerously wrong. And sometimes the misinformation is literally deadly. And it's also harming internet journalism, and because instead of going to the websites where the journalists are publishing their journalism, it's like, no, you should read the AI summary of your search query, right? So it's killing a lot of websites that way, and people cognitively offloading to GenAI is absolutely horrifying. They're atrophying their brains by not thinking, you're all used to looking through different websites, looking through Wikipedia if you want information.
I grew up in the encyclopedia age, so that was
looking through printed books. All the research says that's all way better for your brain than expecting an instant answer machine to put the answer in your brain. So people's brains are literally atrophying, and the greatest danger is children, because children have much more malleable brains than adults do. So whereas if you're like me and you're in your 40s, you spent much of your life probably the vast majority of your life in a world before GenAI, right? And you know how to look for information in libraries and look for information online using credible research methods and whatnot, right?
That credibility factor is key, because there's a lot of people out there, even who are wary of AI, can understand what you're saying, that lending out my critical thinking to things can be lazy or dangerous, but still are will hear you say it spouts out bullshit and be like, I don't know, it seems pretty smart to me. They are really going to have to see it for themselves. I think the thing you suggested at the beginning, I'm going to repeat a little bit, because if you do look up something that you know a lot about, I mean, gardening, for example, okay? Like, that's something I do a lot of. And I have, like, searched something on my phone, and that stupid automatic reply that kind of comes out, and you're just laughing at the results sometimes. It's almost akin to me, like, when on Facebook, yes, I'm still on Facebook. Shame me later. But there's people asking questions of the hive mind. What should I do with this flower? It's dying. And quite literally, every conflicting response will be in the comment section. And that's, no one gets the straight answer from anybody. There's arguments happening in the comments. They end up not having any better of an answer than when they started. And I feel like AI is just the way that like siphons that and decides for itself what the best answer was. And it is doing something to us, but it's also becoming such an integral part of our lives too, right? Like, even trying to get on here this morning, I had 3 pop-ups where I had to turn down offers of AI helping me to do something, whether it was from my laptop or from this website that we're on. And I think some people don't even know when they're using it. So, but I don't want to stay so much on the harms. I really do want to pick your brain on how we protect ourselves from it, how we then repair, right? How we do what you're proposing, like come out on the other side whole again. And, maybe with abandoned data centers in our landscapes.
First of all, I'm really, really sorry that you've had to dodge GenAI on your way to setting up this recording session. But I want one
it's even
thing
tempting me right now. Ask Gemini, and I'm like, I'm not going to do it.
One thing I must say when you say all that, it's not inevitable. This will blow everyone's minds when I explain it to you all right now. My laptop, which I'm using right now, my phone, my smartphone, I never encounter GenAI anywhere. How do I manage that? How do I manage that when GenAI is being shoved down everyone's throats without their consent? Well, first of all, on the PC or phone that GenAI is being shoved down your throat, whether you like it or not, chances are it has a corporate operating system. Chances are it has Windows or Mac OS with Apple Intelligence, or and vanilla Google Android with Gemini, or iPhones with Apple Intelligence or whatnot. Chances are you've got Windows, Mac OS, iOS on an iPhone, Android on an Android phone that is shoving GenAI down your throats without your consent. And they have to shove it down your throats without your consent because it's not such a great thing that you would consent to. And they want to control the world by pushing it onto you, right? But there is a way to avoid it. So you are using probably Windows, Mac OS, iOS, Android, and that's how it's being shoved down your throats without your consent. My laptop has an operating system called Red Core Linux. It's a very minority Linux. Okay, so a lot of the listeners probably don't know what Linux is, or they may have just briefly heard about what it is. So Linux is not one operating system, but a family of operating systems that have existed since the mid-1990s. And anyone with the technological know-how can make their own Linux operating system. And so the Linux operating system on my laptop is called Red Core Linux. And it's based on a Linux operating system that has been around for a long time, like since the 90s, called Gentoo. But the basic vanilla version of Gentoo is a very difficult thing to install. So instead, I've installed Red Core Linux, which is a programmer took the code of Gentoo Linux and made it as easy to install as any easy user-friendly thing.
All right, don't get too technical on us, but maybe if you could share, or together we'll find something to link folks so that they can take some technical steps to remove AI from their
Yeah, so
phones.
my laptop has an operating system that is completely AI free, right? And I'm mentioning the type of Linux it is and not just Linux, because unfortunately, there are some Linux operating systems that you are not safe from GenAI. Notably, the ones that are owned by IBM, so Red Hat and Fedora, and a lot of Linux operating systems are based on Fedora, especially. Those are bad. You want to avoid those. Ubuntu, for the longest time, has been the most popular series of user-friendly Linux operating systems for ordinary people to use. The corporation that owns Ubuntu is called Canonical, and they are all in on GenAI now. So I used to have Kubuntu Linux on my laptop, and I had to replace it with Red Core Linux recently because I don't want a future update to infect my laptop with GenAI. So now my phone is a Google Pixel 7, and I replaced the vanilla Android on it with a fork of Android, which is called Graphene OS. And Graphene OS is like Android with all the bad Google stuff removed from it, and it's very privacy focused. The big problem with Graphene OS is you can only install it on Google Pixel devices. Although Motorola has made an agreement with Graphene OS recently to put out their own line of smartphones with Graphene OS on them. And Graphene OS can still run the vast majority of Android applications no problem, because it is basically Android at its core. It just has all the bad Google stuff removed from it. But if you don't have a Pixel phone or one of the new Motorola phones coming out, which will support Graphene OS, then your other option, if you have an Android phone, is to install Lineage OS. So then you got to go, and Lineage OS, I think most Android models are supported by Lineage OS these days, but you can go on their website and double check if your Android phone is one of the supported models. Now, if you have an iPhone, if you have a Mac, then you're out of luck because you can install a GenAI free Linux distribution onto a PC that originally had Windows on it. And you can install Graphene OS or Lineage OS on an Android phone. But Apple locks down their operating system, the hardware, so much with their MacBooks and their iPhones that you cannot easily or at all replace the operating system. It would take like literal soldering stuff. So if you have like any sort of Apple product, your best option is to save up your money and replace it with a machine that was originally Windows or Android, and then you replace that with a good operating system.
All right. Well, I see the link you shared there. We will include that.
Yeah, so that's on our website, a link on our resources on GenAI avoidance.
Amazing. Let's look at the societal scale of what we may, and I know you're in the middle of your research and you don't have all the answers, but let us speculate a little bit on what the transition would look like, what some of the details of your thesis might end up hashing out.
Well, we're going to have a mass population of people who will need to learn how to think again. And I'm most
in our
concerned about the
underfunded
children.
schools. Well, I guess
I'm most concerned about the children because they never learned that stuff in the first place. They were bombarded with GenAI from the get-go at their most vulnerable. One anecdote that I'm hearing is that the children these days cannot pay attention to something for more than 10 seconds. And how, like my generation, like I'm an elder millennial, for instance. Well, all of us, we're all like, we're not kids. We remember when we were in public school and the teacher would occasionally wheel in the cart with the TV and the VCR.
Sometimes there was even an AV guy.
Yeah, and we'd be so excited because we get to watch a movie instead of do stuff in school, which is boring and stupid, right? But now the anecdote that I'm hearing is that really now a movie isn't exciting to kids because they don't have the attention span for the movie or for the 20-minute sitcom episode or whatever. They don't have the attention span to pay attention to something for more than a minute, literally. And that is super concerning. I mean, arguably television has reduced our attention spans already. To have a much shorter attention span than how our attention spans have been shortened by television is really disturbing.
Well, and I think it's the lack of critical thinking and being able to know a credible source that you don't even know what your sources are when you get these answers. And so that is, I imagine, like, if you could just forget about like doing research on something very specific, but just in your daily skills, or if you're looking at your relationship to the powerful and you don't have critical thought or the ability to discern from bullshit, then that makes us a much more susceptible society to what we're already experiencing, right? We're already experiencing a deliberate dumb down, right? This is a selling feature to the powerful, right? The harms that you're describing. I mean, expensive energy might slow them down, right? They want their centers to be able to operate, but they are fine with a dumbed down and starving workforce. So I wonder what the threshold will be that perhaps the demise of Gen AI will be too big to ignore. And they will have to like pull the plug.
Well, occasionally a Gen AI application just gets shut down completely already. So for instance, OpenAI had a video generation application called Sora, and they shut that down several months ago. And so they originally sold Sora as, people don't need to be filmmakers anymore. Just put in your prompt and Sora will generate a video for you. And then they had to shut that down because it was so immensely expensive on their back end, probably, that they could. So this is going to cascade to everything eventually, right? All these different Gen AI applications are no longer going to become available.
Because consumers, we don't want to pay that cost of those kinds of energy needs and technological needs that need to happen in order for our every whim to be answered within seconds, right? For the labor to be replaced. Like if you talk about filmmaking and art, especially in your last episode with us too, you spoke about what the mind does when it expresses itself creatively and what we would lose from that alone, but just also the time and like this instant gratification, and I need that knowledge immediately. I don't need to earn my way there or any of that. I mean, that just seems like such a profound loss for folks. And yeah, but like they don't want to pay. I mean, we're already subscribed into poverty, right? Everything we need is a monthly fee, and if a lot of these systems, you just can't be charging the consumer back for this. Like we're already broke.
They're doing that with corporations already. So corporations have thought that they can replace their human labor with Gen AI. And that's great. Obviously, capitalists don't give a damn about how is capitalism going to keep going if no one has any money to spend on anything? Because us ordinary folks need our employment income in order to have any income. It's only the wealthy and the privileged to have money without like employment labor, right? So that's going to be a massive problem. But there are headlines right now. You've probably seen the news headlines of all these corporations now that thought that they could replace human labor with Gen AI. And not only are they getting bullshit work out of the Gen AI, but also now OpenAI and all these other evil corporations with their evil Gen AI are starting to charge these corporations for the tokens they consume, because they're no longer able to keep giving them a free ride, basically. So they're finding that they're getting bills that are way larger than their labor costs.
Well, it's about time they experience the same shit we deal with all the time, where we become reliant on something and then they jack the price up, right? Shit, look what we're paying for water and shelter these days. So I don't feel bad for them for a second, but I do understand that model, right? Like, it is this kind of a frivolous thing, AI, right? But it's become anything and everything, and when you lean on it and you fall over and it's gone, I wonder, where we'll be then.
Well, I mean, it's financially unsustainable. My friend and comrade, David Gerard, has a podcast called Pivot to AI, and he's a lot more of an expert on the financial unsustainability and how the Gen AI bubble will pop soon. So basically,
I think it already is.
The big finance behind Gen AI is basically a handful of huge evil corporations: OpenAI, Microsoft. I'm just going to keep calling them Microsoft, NVIDIA, CoreWeave. And what they're doing is they are tossing the same several $billion between themselves. So there isn't a lot of money coming in from consumers or from businesses using their products. It's basically all the money is mainly the same billions of dollars that they're just tossing between themselves. So it looks like, in a shallow sense, like economic activity, but it's not, because there's nothing coming in really in the form of money from consumers. And by consumers, I also mean businesses that are consumers of these evil corporations, right? So that's a bubble. That's like the definition of a bubble. And the only reason why the bubble hasn't popped yet is because investors, the big evil investor corporations like SoftBank out of Japan and whatnot, keep injecting hundreds of billions of dollars and more into this bullshit. But it is going to pop because there's nothing coming in. Eventually, these capitalists, they think that they can keep sucking blood out of a stone. They think that, like, value, and if you study Marxist theory, and I'm a Marxist, value comes from the labor of people. It comes from when people exchange goods and services with each other. It doesn't come from all this financialization scammery that the Gen AI bubble is all about. And capitalism is collapsing anyway. And obviously capitalism in and of itself is unsustainable. And capitalism is very slowly, painfully collapsing right now, right? And so this is basically, Gen AI is one of capitalism's last desperate attempts for nonstop growth, because capitalism demands nonstop growth. That's one of the big problems with capitalism. And that's impossible. That's physically impossible. The resources of the earth are finite. So
I just want to read some of Carney's plan to you to get your reaction, because when you talk about like the growth and the sustainability, he's looking forward to 2034 and would like to, or is promising to, increase AI adoption from just at 12%, that's what they estimate we are now, to 60%. This would include 250,000 AI jobs. And just a little bonus, because I don't want to come back to this statement because it's maddening. I'll link it in the show notes as well. But rolling out AI trainings for post-secondary students across Canada. So you were worried about the children, and the plan is to fully integrate it. And I think because even folks who are, again, wary of it and understand the dangers still believe a certain inevitability. And even you do, right? Like, we are going to have to go through it. Like, we are...
I don't believe in inevitability, no.
Well, you believe that it will grow until it crashes. So there's no stopping it, politically speaking, before it destroys things. That's it. Or am I wrong? Right? Like,
well, because we don't live in a democracy,
yes.
right? So
we're working on that, like, and building people power. But besides that, like, we are going to experience it. So should we all know how to use it? And so,
absolutely not.
okay.
Basically, Mark Carney is talking bullshit. Like,
I believe that.
Obviously when Donald Trump is lying.
Yeah. Carney's a little better at it.
Carney presents himself as a more conventional politician, but it's equally bullshit. It's like saying, I've got these magic beans and I'm going to fly to Jupiter. That's basically the logical value of what Mark Carney is saying. So this is all bullshit. One of the major reasons why the techno-fascists wanted GenAI in the first place was to replace all human labor, which obviously is not something that you can do with computers, but they are determined to. They want, if any of us have a job as like an employee or an independent contractor to make money from our labor so that we can pay to live, they don't want us to have that anymore. They want us to just rot in the gutter because we can't afford food or shelter, basically. So Mark Carney saying, oh, we're going to add all these jobs. He knows that's bullshit. He used to be a central banker, right?
Yeah, he's seen the reports, right? Yeah.
And already there's plenty of hard data that, there isn't a job boom from GenAI. That is just such a bizarre concept. The only argument that can be made is maybe a temporary job boom from construction workers building data centers. But then the amount of people it takes to run a data center doesn't replace the amount of people that they are trying to replace with the data center. And it's all this for a bullshit machine. Like, it's as good as a magic 8-ball.
But with Canadian values, I said I wasn't going to go back to this report, but I do want Santiago's reaction to this.
So with Canadian values, so with subjugating Indigenous people and genociding them values.
Oh, yeah, that's, who's Canadian values? But this is, Mark Carney's quote on the matter, his final note on the matter. AI is here. The question is whether it will improve the lives of all Canadians or benefit only a few. He's looking out for the little guy here. AI can shorten our emergency room wait times and make a small business more competitive if it is governed by Canadian values with a clear goal of improving the lives of Canadians. That's why we need an ambitious new strategy. All that AI builds Canada strong for all. That is our mission.
Bullshit.
So they sell the whole sovereignty angle too, eh? He's wrapped it up in the elbows up package and everything.
Oh yeah. Oh, elbows up. That really pisses me off too. Yeah. How many foolish Canadians bought into that idea that Mark Carney was going to stand up to Trump? Like, he's a central banker. When Trump says jump, Carney's going to ask how high. That sort of fake Canadian patriotism that came out from the Trump tariffs and whatnot, it's seriously cringe.
Well, I didn't think I'd find nationalism woven into the AI statement, but they did it.
I'm not proud to be Canadian. Now that I know how Canada was built upon genociding Indigenous people, I wouldn't be proud to be Canadian. I am Canadian because I have Canadian citizenship, but I'm not proud to be Canadian. Now, we all know here that because of that, Canadian patriotism is bullshit. But yeah, this is all bullshit.
Yeah, I hope everyone can see it as such, right? Santiago, like, what do you think people's read on that is? Like, are you feeling the people around you are wary of AI, or are they enjoying what they think are the perks of it?
I actually I'm getting a lot of skepticism lately, which is interesting. I've been talking actually with people who have been working high up in Google and Amazon in AI services, formerly working, I should mention, who are like every time I see them are the number one like anti AI people. Like they a few years ago they were super pro AI, and then they worked in it and they got a glimpse behind the scene and they're like, oh no, this is going to destroy everything. And
There is a correlation between how well you actually understand the technicalities of AI and how much you. So the more you understand it technically, the more you hate it and want to
yeah,
stop it.
and when I say like they were high up in these like branches, like they like, and then on top of that, the young people I'm talking to, like in my cohort, late 20s at this point, I find most of the people I talk to are very, very, very skeptical of AI because I mean, to be fair, they're mostly lefties. I don't know what the right wing people in my age cohort are saying, but there's a lot of skepticism. But there's also a lot of people who are like hoping that this will be the magic bullet that saves us, right? So
Well, the latter group are too naive for what we're dealing with right now. So we're dealing with societal collapse and we're dealing with fascism intensifying. So with societal collapse, the collapse of capitalism, fascism intensifying, to have any sort of techno-utopian optimism about any of this will get people in danger, literally.
yeah, and I think like there is like on the left we have that the whole fully automated luxury communism argument definitely comes up when we talk about this.
It's
But is
it
like
branches off from that basic income argument too. It's like, okay, fully automated has maybe its perks, but not under slave capitalism where no
yeah,
one will be paid or can get even water or shelter at that point. So
and that's the thing, right? Is that like capitalism is this force that corrupts everything that we do. Like there, like we cannot build the kind of world that we want while capitalism exists. It's just impossible. It is a destructive force in everything because everything is centered on those profit motives, and you just like I was having this debate the other day about like even like medical innovation and whether or not capitalism is good for it. I'm like, no, capitalism destroys everything. It holds us back in everything. Like there
Absolutely correct. What Mark Carney is doing is he's basically looking at trillions of dollars with like a greedy look on his face, drooling. And then he has to, but it's all tied to this evil thing that is destroying the planet and destroying humanity. And now, because he doesn't serve us, because we don't live in a democracy, he serves capital. He is a central banker. He serves capitalism. So he basically needs to sell this evil machine that he thinks he's going to get trillions of dollars and immense power and wealth from. And he's trying to sell it to the little guy, to us, to the proletariat, and make it sound not so bad.
yeah, he wants us to believe that he would harness this thing and distribute the wealth it may generate. Like,
Well, I mean, even if he wanted to, like Bernie Sanders, I don't think he would even want the wealth to be distributed to Canadians evenly or anything like that. Like he is and Bernie Sanders is full of bullshit. So Bernie Sanders, I mentioned how much I hate the guy and how much I hate AOC and whatnot.
I feel like there's a little bit of a hall of shame. Yeah, Olivia Chow's like the local contribution.
Yeah, I hate Olivia Chow. And we're all like I know about your background with the NDP and how you had to learn that the grassroots are good, but the leadership are con people.
Yeah,
right?
there's also some weeds in the grassroots there. There's a
Right?
lot of liberals.
It's fake. It's fake leftism. It's fake. And the good grassroots people who have good intentions and are there for good reasons, they don't realize yet that they're wasting their time and energy. And it's so sad, right? So yeah, we are not going. So Bernie Sanders talks about we should democratize AI, and so everyone should get $1,000 a year. And it's like, yeah, every American should get $1,000 a year from something that is destroying the planet and getting people to delegate their thinking to the fascists, basically, like Sam Altman.
Yeah, and I'm afraid that there is a thread of that within the resistance here in Canada to AI, that it is hinged on, like, we make the decisions around AI, but I'm not getting the feel that the decision would be to shut her down. It would just be, I don't even know, because nobody's truly explained even what, like, keeping it public or keeping it sovereign and Canadian would even fucking mean, right?
It is fundamentally evil and bad.
Yeah, you can just feel that these statements are reliant on us not fully understanding how it all works. So I do appreciate you breaking it down. Before we go, though, let's talk about the herd of elephants above me. But no, let's talk about your Kickstarter program that is going to help fund the project, your book, your next book. This isn't your first rodeo, but we're talking about recovering from AI. Talk a little bit about that. And again, we'll have a link to your Kickstarter as the call to action in our show notes.
Yeah, so I am talking to psychologists. So the subject matter experts who I think are the best potential sources of expertise for my book. And I actually go to people and ask them questions and interview them, which is like the opposite of GenAI. So that's psychologists for the immense psychological and cognitive psychological harms that this is doing for people offloading their thinking to these bots. And they're going to have mental breakdowns when these machine systems are no longer available to them. Because they've grown dependent on them, they are going to have psychological and mental breakdowns. So I'm going to talk to psychologists about that. I'm going to talk to sociologists. How does this affect society? Environmentalists. I've got a really cool environmentalist. His name is Jerry McGovern. He wrote a book called The 99th Day. I have a webinar with him in a couple of weeks to promote the book. He's going to be one of my research sources to talk about. I don't think we can reverse the damage of climate change. It's too late now, which is absolutely horrifying. But we should at least do what we can so that it accelerates as slowly as possible. So how are we going to recover from the damage? I speak to environmentalists about that. I'm going to speak to technicians. One thing that we haven't mentioned was tech debt. So this is kind of a computer nerd thing, but most of the software that people depend on every day that is updated through the internet is going to be loaded with GenAI vomited code, which is immensely buggy. And computer programmers say that GenAI vomited code is buggy in a way that human coded bugs aren't. So if a human being makes a mistake when they're working as a computer programmer, that's an easier bug to fix than Claude Code vomiting code is to fix. Because when people make mistakes writing computer programming code, it at least fits the way human beings think about logic and whatnot. So there's going to be all kinds of software systems that we depend upon every day, and it's going to be buggy as hell, and that's going to cause a lot of problems. Because our society has become really dependent on computer technology. So it's going to be a massive problem.
It's like Y2K all over again, like we prepped for that shit and it was nothing.
Well, it was nothing because there was a team of computer programmers who worked very hard to stop it from becoming something. So it's not, there was this fear about Y2K and it was all for nothing. It it would have been a huge problem had it not been for all these computer programmers who worked hard to fix the problem back in 1999 and whatnot.
Is that what we need now? Or is something...
We need to remove all the GenAI vomited code out of everything, which is going to take a really long time. No one should be using it to generate computer programming code. That's just so incredibly stupid. Gen Z, or Gen Z in Canadian English. A lot of those people, those younger people, have never been able to enter the workforce, not even to get an entry-level job at Tim Hortons even. That's going to be a massive economic problem. In the workforce, the way the workforce works is people enter an occupation and they're juniors and they're learning and they're maybe fresh out of university, or they start working at McDonald's and they learn from their entry-level position, and then as the years go by, they gather more and more expertise and they get promoted into more senior positions. Maybe that's more the way things work in the white-collar world, but still, that's the way it's supposed to work. But with all these corporations thinking that they can replace entry-level labor with GenAI, now you've got Gen Z who cannot even enter the workforce. They're going to have massive economic problems. But also, we don't have the fresh blood coming in to take on entry-level roles and then to become more senior as time goes on. You don't get seniors without hiring juniors and mentoring them and giving them time to learn. So that's going to be a massive problem. People losing skills atrophying.
I imagine massive unemployment too, because you have, even now we're seeing companies replace workforces, whether the AI is ready to take on the load or not, right? That's fine. The consumer pays the price in a shoddier product, but those people are not compensated. They're completely out of a job. And now they have a skill set that has presumably been replaced by AI. So not even entry level, they're programming it to replace inadequately well-paid jobs. That then sit on unemployment. Then they've cut EI and the qualifications for that. I mean, the disruptions to the labor market are definitely clear. Like, who do you talk to about how we recover from something like that? Because I would like to just start building a whole new labor model, right? If we're,
yeah. Well, yeah, that's why I'm going to be talking to a lot of Marxists. I'm a Marxist, or Marxist and Stop GenAI. You definitely want Marxists to provide their ideas about how do we recover the economy. Right? Because only a Marxist really understands why capitalism is so much of a problem, why it needs to be stopped. Okay, I've got anarcho-communists who are disagreeing with me when I say that. But,
no doubt. But I feel like a lot of the answers that you'll find, even some might be technically linked to AI and the issues around that, but they hold the answers for just generally building newer, healthier systems on the other end, right? The same kind of cognitive decline or societal detachments and all of these things are things that we are experiencing because of capitalism as well as AI, right? There's a lot of aspects around the shift in society that's pushed in this consumerism.
One thing I must make clear, because a lot of people are really confused and they feel like they can't say AI is bad without, there might be some good uses for it, blah, blah, blah. And it's all based on them not understanding that AI is a marketing term. There's not a formal computer science definition for it. And then B, the good things that were called AI prior to 2022, that's not what GenAI is, right? So anything that was good that used to be called AI, like the baddies in video games and whatnot, that's not, or good machine learning applications, which would use much smaller amounts of training data that humans are supervising, right? That is not what GenAI is. So when people say, oh, I don't like AI, but there are some good uses for it, maybe, and maybe it'll get better over time, they are, first of all, calling things that we called AI before 2022, yeah, they're getting it all confused, right? So definitely Gen AI must be completely, there is no new, people say nuance. No, there is no nuance in Gen AI. Gen AI should be stopped completely. Stop Gen AI, it's the name of my organization, right? The few good things that were called AI before 2022 have nothing to do with Gen AI. So when we talk about stopping Gen AI, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you don't have procedural generation in Minecraft anymore.
Yeah, I think the last time you were on, we spent a bit of time talking about the difference between AI and Gen AI and the positive applications that we have there. But
and it's not going to get better. There's a computer science concept called model collapse, and I'm not going to get too technical about it, but it's basically more and more data on the internet is AI slop. So it means more and more of what's being fed as training data into ChatGPT, for instance, is AI slop. It's like, you probably remember mad cow disease, right? Mad cow disease caused by cows being fed their own meat. Basically, eventually they developed prions and went mad, and it was a huge problem in the 90s and whatnot. That's basically what model collapse is. So if you
Santiago's
feed
too young. That's what that face
data
is.
into AI, it completely breaks. And that's becoming more and more of a problem because more and more of the data out there now is slop rather than human-created data. So that's another reason why Gen AI is unsustainable.
Well, I hope you're right. But even though it sounds scary to get there, it's good to know that there's folks planning for its collapse, its demise, and to mitigate its harms. Because
yeah. And I'm totally allied with people protesting data centers, and they should get in contact with Stop Gen AI so that we can coordinate things. But but I hope that the people protesting data centers aren't just not in my neighborhood, but this should not be happening, period.
Absolutely.
So it shouldn't go in my backyard. It shouldn't go in anyone's backyard. It shouldn't exist.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kim, for schooling us.
Recovering After AI book. So the Kickstarter is running until August 6th. And I have to do these books because I was a professor and I had to quit my professor job at the Open Institute of Technology because they were going to force me to subject my students to Gen AI. And that was just unconscionable to me. And I am financially struggling right now to pay my rent. And so that's what the Kickstarters are for. If you look at my Kickstarter profile, all 3 of the Kickstarter campaigns I did previously were all successfully fulfilled.
Awesome.
So, yeah. So I could use, anyone who can spare $15 for an ebook, that would be an immense help. And you get the ebook for about what we're supposed to do to recover from the mess of Gen AI, because it's really destroying everything.
Thank you, Kim. I look forward to reading it.
Thank you. And you've been great. And I'm happy to have Santiago here. And thank you very much for supporting my book project. And it's the fundraising is going great. So got till August 6th.
August 6th. All right. So the link is in the show notes under the call to action there. And you can also visit stopgenai.com. That is a wrap on another episode of Blueprints of Disruption. Thank you for joining us. Also, a very big thank you to the producer of our show, Santiago Halu Quintero. Blueprints of Disruption is an independent production operated cooperatively. You can follow us on Twitter at BP of Disruption. If you'd like to help us continue disrupting the status quo, please share our content, and if you have the means, consider becoming a patron. Not only does our support come from the progressive community, so does our content. So reach out to us and let us know what or who we should be amplifying. So until next time, keep disrupting.